to Rough Point Museum. My name is Gina Tangora, and I'm the Interpretation and Visitor Experience Manager for the Museums of the Newport Restoration Foundation. Thank you for joining us from your home, virtually here at the Newport home of heiress, collector, and philanthropist Doris Duke. This is our second Myth and Mystique program of 2020, where we explore some of the more complex, confounding, and compelling aspects of Doris Duke's life and legacy. Tonight we're going to take a close look at the connection between Doris Duke and her pets. While Doris's pets were an important part of her life, and stories about her pets are some of the most endearing parts of her legacy, they also contributed to the sense of mystique surrounding Doris. Today, you will still hear rumors and half-truths about her supposed menagerie of exotic animals, and questions like, weren't there lions and giraffes roaming the grounds of Rough Point? Why are there camel sculptures at Rough Point? So we're going to take a closer look at the impact Doris's animals had on her lifestyle, her personality, and even the interiors of Rough Point, and the shaping of the landscape. And we are going to look at how pet ownership has changed over the past century and the role pets may play in our own lives today, as well as meet some of the pets in the larger NRF community. Doris Duke was an enigmatic woman, and she did not leave a large body of correspondence or personal diaries behind. So we have to use what she did leave to help uncover the woman behind the public persona. We are going to meet Doris's animal companions at Rough Point using objects, images, home videos, oral histories, as well as the spaces shaped by the non-human residents at Rough Point. Please ask us your questions and leave your comments in the chat box below the video. We'd love to hear from you. So I'm standing here in the solarium of Rough Point. This was one of Doris Duke's favorite rooms in the house, and it was a site of early board meetings for the Newport Restoration Foundation. She sometimes repaired ceramics in this room, and it was a space that was used and enjoyed by her pets. But before we get into the stories of those pets, let's take a step back and take a brief look at the history of pet ownership in the United States for some context. Today, nearly 60% of U.S. households are thought to have at least one pet, and pets are a common part of everyday life. Even if you don't own a pet, you are likely to encounter one in your day-to-day and know someone who does. We think of pets as being part of the family. In many cases, pets are in our homes. There are laws designed to protect animals and to encourage their well-being, and of course, there is a very successful commercial industry of pet products. But this was not always the case. Humans have lived with animals and domesticated animals for centuries. It is more recently, really beginning in the 19th century, where there is an evolution from an animal that had a practical, functional, utilitarian use, meaning the animal helped you in your work, to a pet that played a different role in your life, whether it was more of a fashion accessory, or for amusement, or as a companion and source of comfort. And pet ownership began to be seen as a way to develop moral character, especially in children, and to improve the domestic space of the home. While wealthier people became interested in dog breeding and having the right pedigree dog, this was a reflection of their elevated social status, working class families also began owning pets, like songbirds, for companionship and affection. And let's not forget about squirrels. There are many manuals written on the proper care of pets, including etiquette, decorum, and how to train pets. With that in mind, let's take a look at some of Doris's childhood pets. While we do not know if her parents subscribed to the popular theories about children and pet ownership, Doris grew up surrounded by animals, and animals were a part of her life from an early age. And the pets she owned in childhood and for most of her life were common pets at the time. As a young child, her father gave her a pony named Prince, or Princey Shep. She also had dogs. One was named Rose. Here is Doris with her Airedale Terrier and some other dogs in the early 1920s.
All through the winter, you hung around. Now I began to feel homeward bound. Blackbird, gotta be on my way, where there's sunshine galore. Pack up all my cares and
Rabbits were popular pets for children in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Here is Doris in the summer of 1924 at Rough Point with pet rabbits. And then we come to cats.
Oh, what hard luck stories they all hand me. Make my bed the light. I'll arrive late tonight. Blackbird, bye-bye.
Here's Doris with some cats in 1924, sitting on the back porch of Rough Point. Doris also owned cats as an adult. Shortly after their honeymoon in 1936, her first husband, James Cromwell, gifted Doris with 2 Siamese cats. One cat was named Pete. The cats remained a fixture in Doris's life long after their marriage ended. Dr. Louis J. Camuti was the cat's veterinarian, and though he was based out of New York, for 24 years, he made house calls to both the Duke residence in New York and to Duke Farms in New Jersey to give Pete the cat and the other cats their checkups. Dr. Camuti wrote about Doris and the cats in his 1980 memoir, All My Patients Are Under the Bed, where he discusses the mystique of quote-unquote cat people. He speaks fondly of Doris Duke and recounts that when he first met her at Duke Farms, she wore dungarees. He also tells stories about the dogs at Duke Farms, but we will get to that later. Perhaps one of the enduring misconceptions, rumors, and untruths about Doris surround Doris's pet camels, Princess and Baby. Despite what you might have heard about the giraffes, tigers, or other exotic species, Princess and Baby, while certainly unusual for Newport, were Doris's only exotic pets at Rough Point. Princess and Baby were Bactrian camels. Unlike their one-humped cousins, Bactrian camels are native to Central Asia. The region today encompasses parts of China and Mongolia. They live in a climate that gets very hot and also very cold, so that's why the camels grow longer here in the winter, for warmth and protection. Both Princess and Baby were born in 1987 and first came to Rough Point in 1988. Despite a long-standing myth that a mysterious Arabian sheik gifted Doris with the camels and that the camels were Arabian, what really happened is that in the late 1980s, Doris decided to purchase a Boeing 737 aircraft. As part of the negotiations, it was agreed that the seller would include 2 Bactrian camels. Interestingly enough, Doris herself found 2 baby camels at the J.C. Schultz Game Farm in Catskill, New York, and was reimbursed by the aircraft seller since this was part of the contractual legal obligation. Similar to the debutante parties for young women making their debut to Newport society, Princess and Baby had a debutante party in 1988 and wore pink hibiscus flowers. The camels enjoyed the summers here on the back lawn of Rough Point. Although the breeze from the ocean is cool, they stayed under the shade of a tent on the terrace outside the solarium when it was especially sunny. Rumor has it that they also enjoyed eating graham crackers. The camels traveled between Duke Farms and Rough Point in a trailer, and they spent winters in a heated stable at Duke Farms. The camels were outdoor pets at Rough Point who enjoyed snacking on the rugosa roses and the hedges, so much so that they shaped the landscape. They used to be quite a surprise to visitors on the cliff walk, who would see the camels sometimes peeking over the edge of Rough Point's property to look at the cliff walk below. There was only one time that we are aware of that the camels came into the house. According to a former caretaker, during Hurricane Bob in 1991, all the furniture was cleared out of the solarium, hay was placed on the floor, and the camels were brought inside to protect them during the storm. After Doris Duke passed away in 1993, Princess and Baby retired to Duke Farms in New Jersey. Princess eventually moved to Popcorn Park Zoo, an animal sanctuary in New Jersey, where she used her newly discovered prognostication skills to predict NFL football games and the Super Bowl for nearly the next decade. Her best season was the 2008-2009 season, where she predicted 17 out of 22 games and correctly chose the Pittsburgh Steelers to win the Super Bowl that year. Baby passed away in 1994, and Princess passed away in 2014. Staff at Rough Point would be responsible for the care and feeding the camels, and Princess and Baby also took vitamins. Here's an inventory of supplies used by the camels in 1993. If you have had the opportunity to visit Rough Point in person, you will see living statues of the camels on the front lawn. Both are a tribute to Princess and Baby. There is also a mini camel in the kitchen garden. The frames of the camels are made out of steel rebar and are covered with chicken wire. Zip ties hold sphagnum moss in place. The plants, mostly sedums and hens and chicks, are overwintered on the camels. In the spring, some new plants are added. Dr. Camuti, who was a Duke cat doctor, tells the story of the time he met Doris at Duke Farms. As he remembers, 3 of the biggest Great Danes he had ever seen came bounding across the lawn and into the back seat of the car he and Doris were in. Throughout the entire tour, the dogs kept licking the back of his balding head, and covered it with warm, sticky saliva. Doris had dogs all her life. Some dogs lived at Duke Farms and some lived at Rough Point. The dogs would sometimes travel from Rough Point to Duke Farms, and sometimes some of the Duke Farm dogs would join Doris during the winter at Shangri-La in Hawaii. The number of dogs ranged as well, depending on what year it was. In the period between 1960 and 1983, there were at least 3 and sometimes as many as 14 dogs at one time at Rough Point. Most were German Shepherds in this period.
When I first moved here, we only had one dog, and then came Charlie and Henry. One was real shy.
When I first came here, I think there was 4. There was Blondie, Patty, Henry, Hetty, and Maxie, 5.
And here's a list of the names of the dogs in the mid-1970s. Here are some of the ID tags from dogs owned by Doris later in life. They are for Starbuck, Corrigan, Slick, Levi, Prince, Chemo, and Chairman Mao. Dogs had their own personalities and eccentricities. Some were shy, like Henry, and some were especially naughty, like Max. Their closest bond was with Doris, and for the most part, the other caretakers of Rough Point got along with the dogs, but weren't particularly close with them. Doris's dogs had a reputation that persists to this day. There were signs posted outside of Rough Point, one is still visible if you look closely the next time you are on Bellevue Avenue, that said, "Beware of dogs," and locals remember tall barbed wire fences with packs of ferocious dogs patrolling the property. According to former caretakers, the dogs at Rough Point in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s were not domesticated in the traditional sense or housebroken. But they were not trained guard dogs, and the role was not simply for protection. Listen as John Nutt, a former Rough Point caretaker in the 1970s and early 1980s, describes Doris Duke's relationship with her dogs at Rough Point.
They were Miss Duke's pets. She adored them and they adored her. I mean, she'd have a dog in her room with her at night, and she loved the dogs. They came to her all the time. They were insanely in love with her, and she was good to them too. And every report I had to write when Miss Duke was overseas in Hawaii or traveling, I had to write like a weekly report. I usually sent them in once a month because that's one of the first top headings on my list for her. What was going on was the dogs, how they're doing.
Doris cared deeply for her dogs. When Doris was away, she requested daily reports, and reports on the dogs and their well-being were the given priority over other reports from Doris's homes. There are stories from former estate managers that describe how Doris personally became involved in the health and well-being of her dogs. This example is from the mid-1970s and shows a former estate manager's notes on the health of Tony. You can see that Doris personally gave Tony his medication. In the mid-1960s, there was a dog kennel built at Rough Point, near the site of what is now the garage. The dogs lived mostly outdoors, although sometimes they stayed in the basement. Linda McFarland Knierim was the daughter of Rough Point caretakers in the 1960s, and one of her responsibilities was to feed the dogs each day.
I only remember these dogs because I had to feed the dogs twice a day. One dog was real shy. He would take his bowl and just go off to the other room and he'd spill his food. They canned dog food. It was such a pain because you opened it up both sides and just squeeze it out into their dish. And then they got raw eggs in it. And then when Gainsburgers came out, it was so much easier. You could just scrunch it all up and give it to them like that. But they got fed twice a day, once in the morning and once when they came home from school.
Here are some other objects in the house related to the care and feeding of dogs, including a dog bath that is now used to house plants during the winter. While the dogs were not house trained for most of the late 20th century, that didn't mean that the dogs didn't go inside the house. Rough Point is filled with sumptuous Flemish tapestries, elegant French furniture, vibrant Chinese export porcelain, and beautifully crafted, delicate rugs. While Doris was alive, she lived with these objects and frequently rearranged the spaces to accommodate new pieces and her changing tastes, but she was still very much conscious of their value. She frequently instructed staff to be careful around fragile and valuable objects in the home, and staff remembered that there were certain rugs that no one was supposed to walk on. However, none of these directives applied to the dogs. Here's a great example of this. This photo shows Max, one of Doris's German shepherds, enjoying one of the sofas in the music room, while Daisy, Linda McFarland's St. Bernard, looks on dejectedly from the floor. Let's go back to the solarium to take a closer look. You can clearly see on these circa 1980 chairs and sofa that the dogs enjoyed sitting on the furniture in the solarium, and they left their mark. Even after Doris passed away in 1993, some of the Rough Point dogs remained in the house. The last of Doris's dogs on the Rough Point property when the Newport Restoration Foundation resumed ownership in 1999 were Chemo, an Alaskan Malamute, and Chairman Mao, a Chinese Shar Pei. Doris had a special affinity for animals, and we can see that from her fashion choices, the causes she supported, like the Animal Medical Center and her support of PETA, and the surviving home videos that majorly feature her pets, that Doris's animals had a profound impact on her lifestyle and the shaping of Rough Point, both inside and out. She was a very private person and was very conscious of the fact that her wealth and position made her a target for those who wanted to take advantage of her, and that it was unwise to trust people in general. It may be that she was able to be herself in a way that she could not be with most people. She loved her animals, and they unconditionally loved her. And for that reason, stories of Max, Chemo, Princess, Baby, and many others are a part of Doris's story, and the story we tell at Rough Point. As we are celebrating Doris's pets, we also wanted to celebrate your pets and the special role they play in your lives. They are loyal companions, jogging buddies, empathetic comforters, and a source of joy. So now we are going to meet and celebrate some very special pets from the NRF community. We ask for you all to share photos, videos, and stories of the pets in your lives. And if you have more stories to share with us, please do so in the chat below the video.
I say hug, she says yeah. I said squeeze, she says yeah, 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 baby. She says yeah, 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 all the time. I say dance, she says yeah. I say fast, she says yeah. I say slow, she says yeah, 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 baby. She says yeah, 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 all the time. You say yeah, 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 baby. You say yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, 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 baby. He says, yeah, 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 all the time. You say, yeah, 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 baby. You say, yeah, 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 baby. You say, yeah, 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 all the time. You say drive, he says, yeah. You say park, he says, yeah. I say neck, he says, yeah, 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 baby. Yeah, 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 baby. He says, yeah, 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 all the time.
I first visited Rough Point quite a few years ago, probably not long after it was first opened to the public. I love house museums, and Rough Point was certainly compelling in all sorts of ways: architecture, decoration, and furnishings, spectacular sight. However, the most memorable moment of that visit happened as I was leaving. I do not remember the specific logistics, but somehow I exited the house from a rear door in the kitchen wing. At the same time I was leaving, a very elderly, somewhat stiff-legged chow dog was also leaving the house for an outing. A staff member was kind enough to identify him to me as Chairman Mao, possibly the last of Miss Duke's dogs to survive her. I gave him a pat on the head. His presence gave me a palpable sense of Rough Point as a beloved home, and of Miss Duke's love and care for animals. I shall never forget that moment. Eric Esau, Newbury, Vermont. While many of Doris Duke's dogs were born at Rough Point and Duke Farms, she also adopted from and supported the Potter League here in Newport. We wanted to take this opportunity to highlight the work of the Potter League, an organization which shelters companion animals and finds them safe homes, educates the community, and provides programs to help pet owners provide better lives for their pets, and believes that relationships between animals and people enhance animals' lives and enrich the human experience. To find out more, please visit the Potter League's website at potterleague.org. Thank you for joining us. We would love to hear from you. Please feel free to leave your comments on the video. And we look forward to welcoming you to our museums this summer, either in person or from your own home. The grounds and gardens of Rough Point are currently open, and the museum is opening very soon, so you too can see the spaces where Princess and Baby and the dogs roamed. And if you would like to support the work we do, please visit newportrestoration.org/support to find out more. Thank you and good night.